students. How is everyone? Miss H here.
Hi, Mrs. Hebert here.
We hope everyone's having a good week. We hope everyone's enjoying learning about the Renaissance. We love getting all of your work. It's been fabulous so
And
far.
we hope you're enjoying these awesome screencasts.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yes, and we have so much fun recording them.
We do. So yeah, we actually talked about it in one of our classes, Miss Hebert. We talked about how much fun we have recording these. It was a lot.
We did, and I think that we gave some other teachers some ideas.
Yeah, so remember, if you see other teachers start to do this, remember who the originals were.
Yes.
We need the credit.
Give credit to H squared.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my god, amazing. All right, so today we're talking about something a little bit more specific than just a general Renaissance. We're actually talking about the scientific revolution. So for all, you might hear the word revolution, you might think something maybe violence. But we had talked about a lot in Global 9 that revolution doesn't usually mean like a war. It could just mean a change of some sort. So if it's a scientific revolution or change, it's going to just kind of be a change in the way people think.
Right. I'm thinking of that game that we played at the beginning of the year with the index cards, and I feel like revolution was one of our words.
It absolutely was. I totally remember it.
Right, we put it on the card, so we said that this is a word that's going to continue to come up this year. So it's super important. Anytime you see that word revolution, change, some sort of major big change.
Yeah, and if you look at this little guy over here, right, it says that because of the scientific revolution, he began independent thinking, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and what that means.
Yeah.
Okie doke. So, here's the time, 1543 to 1687. And basically, we're going to have a lot of discoveries in terms of science and philosophy. So when you hear breakthrough discoveries, it means really, really important discoveries.
Right. And there's going to be this conflict between the old ideas and the new ideas. So usually when we would start this lesson in class, our do now would be something about like, what is something that you disagree with your parents about? Why do you disagree with them about it? And something that always comes up is like the old idea versus the new idea. So your parents, maybe growing up, their curfew was 8 o'clock.
Right.
And you want a 9 o'clock curfew. So that's like an old idea versus a new idea. And this causes a lot of conflict during the Renaissance.
Vine versus TikTok.
Yes, conflict.
Oh
yeah, old idea versus new idea.
And a lot of this is inspired by the Renaissance because remember, during the Renaissance, we have a new way of thinking. We're moving towards more secular thinking where it's like not religious. It focuses more on humanism. All of that's going to help lead to people being a bit more curious about the world around them, questioning more things about the world around them. And
reading.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Printing Press. Lots of reading, for sure. And it's going to end up, again, kind of challenging religion in general. Not even just the Catholic Church, just religion in general.
Right.
Okay. All right, so here's a little bit of that old versus new.
Yeah. So the old science up until this point relied on tradition. So the ancient, because we've been doing this forever, it's just accepted. So those ancient authorities, people really wanted to continue tradition. Also the church, remember, the church was very powerful. So if the church said something, everybody was going to listen to it. The old science also relied on some common sense and just some general reasoning. But remember, this is before you could back up your reasoning. So that's what's going to really drive the change under like the new science.
Yeah, so instead of just kind of taking what tradition told you or what the church told you or what, your family members tell you, instead you're going to want to observe for yourself and kind of experiment. Well, if I do this, 10 times, does it happen 10 times, 9 out of 10 times? And they're going to want to have, instead of just using that like kind of common sense, that like very kind of like laid back reasoning, they're going to make it more scientific. They want proof, like why does this happen? How is it happening, and will it happen again?
Right. And what's really cool is that they came up with a particular method for how to prove this new science, how to move towards this new science. And for all of you in 9th grade, you do this method all the time in your lab class. Maybe not right now on remote learning, But when we were in the building, you were all following the scientific method during your lab class.
Absolutely. And look, here's where two subject areas in school can like kind of collide a little bit.
Yes, I love when that happens.
That's really cool. So this is what's developed during the scientific revolution. It's not just accepting something happens because you were told it happens and that's it. You actually go through these steps to try to prove why it's happening or how it's happening.
Right. And maybe you repeat it, like Ms. Hanovich just said, you get that proof. You get the proof 5 or 6 times in a row, 10 times in a row, and then you believe it's real.
Yep. All right. So, to go into a little bit more of like how this scientific revolution happened, like what were the causes? So scientists start to notice that inadequacies were happening, or maybe that another word for inadequate, meaning that it wasn't coming up to like a certain level. It was falling short. That's a better way of explaining it. So they start to question certain events that are happening. And interest starts to grow in things like chemistry, astrology, and math. And a lot of that has to do with the new technology, something like the printing press, which changes the game, or the telescope, or the microscope. That's going to help generate new interest in science overall, because they want to find new inventions.
Right, exactly. So some of our famous, I guess we called them celebrities during the Middle Ages. So here are some of our celebrity scientists from the Renaissance. So we've got Copernicus, Galileo, Newton. However, there were many others. There's other, next year, and maybe even during the Enlightenment, we'll talk a little bit about Descartes, and we'll talk about other, like, some other scientists that made major discoveries during the scientific revolution that you still learn about today.
There's so many, but these are like the heavy hitters, like Miss Hebert said, like the celebrities that everyone knows about.
So I'd say the most important one here, the most famous one, is Galileo, because he is the one who's going to support the heliocentric theory with his observation. So going back to the scientific method, if you can see on this chart, Copernicus is going to be our first guy who suggests it, who basically says, hey, this is an idea that the sun is at the center of the universe, and Galileo is going to be the one to prove it.
Because previously, it was widely accepted that it was the Earth in the center of the universe. That was something that the church even promoted, that idea that the Earth was in the center of the universe. But it was Copernicus who says, wait a minute, maybe it is the sun.
Right. And Galileo is going to prove this theory, and then the church is going to freak out. Because up until this point in history, the church was saying that the Earth was at the center of the universe. So now you have this guy coming out and being like, wait a second, no, it's not. And I can prove it using my telescope. And the church got really angry at him. And they actually condemned him, and they wanted to execute him. And he was forced to basically take back his ideas and say that even though he could prove it, that it was wrong.
Yeah.
And
like a psych.
Right.
Because remember, friends, if someone comes around claiming that the church is wrong, the church loses power that way. And we know that the church was very powerful before the Renaissance specifically.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. That's the amount of power that the church ended up having.
Right.
Newton, everyone, or maybe you don't know, there's the famous story that's the apple, right, Miss Hebert? Am I messing this up? No, yeah, okay. Yeah. He was sitting under a tree and an apple fell on his head, and that's how he came across the idea of gravity, which I don't think is true.
Super important. Thank you, gravity.
Next. Oh, okay, so here's Descartes. On the bottom, I think, therefore I am. I remember learning about that in college a lot. Basically, believing that human reasoning is the way to discover truth. It shouldn't just be based on tradition. So it shouldn't be like, well, my ancestors have always said that, bathing is a way to die. That if you bathe, you're gonna lose your life, and then you're gonna die, which is how a lot of people thought, right? Queen Elizabeth only took one bath in her whole life because they thought it was very dangerous for you. Descartes says, wait a minute, we shouldn't just listen to what people have to say. We should actually try to figure out ourselves what to do as times change.
Right.
And then I skipped Bacon up top. He had the scientific method. Sorry, Miss Hebert, go ahead.
No, so bacon is almost as important as regular bacon. That's how I remember him.
That's
So
awesome.
I hope that I'm not offending any vegetarians. But bacon is really good, and so is the scientist Bacon, because Bacon, because I think he was French. So
Whoa.
Bacon, he had a new approach to science, and he's really responsible for driving that scientific method and making these scientists follow the scientific method.
Yep. So both of them really kind of focus on don't just believe something for the sake of believing it. Make sure that it's actually backed up with either proof or reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's the big deal about this scientific revolution? Well, the fact that you're still studying or still using something from it, is very telling that hundreds of years later, you're still using this scientific method in your own class today. It's important. It really does change human history again, because of the way that we think.
Right. Also, the fact that the universe was no longer a mystery.
Yeah.
I know that sounds very, very trippy, but now we could actually answer questions about the universe, like why is the sky blue? Are we the only planet? Is there these questions that we're still trying to answer today? People started trying to answer back in the 1600s.
Yep. Oh, and oh my goodness, I love this, the concept of natural laws, because in my government and my student core class, I have whole lessons on natural laws about why do we act morally or ethically, or is that something we're born with, or is that something we learn? And that's kind of cool that this discussion starts during the scientific revolution.
Right. And science also just became popular,
Yeah.
which is really good. And it doesn't stop during the scientific revolution. We continue to see many, many advancements after this, many of which you'll pick up with in Global 2.
And finally, it paves the way for the Age of Reason, something you're going to learn about, where again, it kind of talks about why humans think the way they think, or how we should change our thinking, things like that.
Right.
All right. And so what you guys are going to do next is you have 2 documents that you're going to read, highlight, annotate, and then you're going to answer these questions. So the first one's all about Galileo. Oh my gosh, did we not even make a Bohemian Rhapsody reference? I just realized that in my head.
Oh,
everyone go listen to that song immediately.
Go listen to the song.
Part of your homework.
Queen is awesome.
Oh, my favorite. And then after this document, you have a really quick document 2, which is about geocentric versus heliocentric, something we talked about at the start of this lesson.
Yes, very important vocabulary words, geocentric and heliocentric.
And that's all I got, Miss Ebert. You got anything?
That's all I got.
There you go. Kind of a short one today, friends.
Right.
We hope you enjoy the weekend. We hope it's a nice one. Go outside, enjoy some sun.
Stay safe, stay healthy.
Please. And talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Yes. Bye.